Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. As you can tell by the scene we are in, this is kind of more of a serious conversation I'm having today. Something that has been on my heart that I want to get out there, and I think it's time. So I last week talked in my vlog about the fact that this week I would be talking about kind of my story of waking up and leaving a cult. And that cult is the Jehovah's Witness religion. I want to preface this first and foremost with saying this YouTube channel is not going to be solely focused on this. If you look back at the other videos I posted, this is much more my life as a stay-at-home mom, raising 2 kids, and just kind of the fun of all of that, the joys of that, just casual, daily, day-to-day stuff. But with that being said, I did want to talk about this because going through what I have gone through the last couple of years has really made me who I am today. And another thing I want to bring up is, I know there are a lot of ex-JWs out there who either are in the process of waking up and leaving, they're in the middle of it, they've been out for years, and it's just good for me to talk about this because I know in some way, shape, or form it will help somebody else. I am still healing. I am still going through the emotions of all this. I think it will take years, if not decades, to come to terms with all this more. So there will be emotion. I have no doubt about that. I also wanted to be able to do this in my own terms on my page, to give the 100% truth and the side of my story, because I have no doubts that there has been a lot said about us since we have left. I want to kind of set the record straight. So to begin, we left Jehovah's Witness religion after being born and raised in it in 2023. So we disassociated in July of that year. So we are going to be going on 2 years this summer that we have been officially out and gone from it. And I'm going to just say up front, no, we did not leave because we were offended by someone or stumbled and we just couldn't get past it. So we had to walk away. No, we did not leave because our marriage was falling apart and we wanted to live separate lives. We are still very happily married. We're actually celebrating 18 years on Monday, and our marriage has never been stronger than since we have gone through this. No, we did not want to live some crazy debauched, sinful life. We are the exact same humans we have been our entire lives. We are raising children to be good humans, and that is our sole and only focus, is that. So we are not doing anything crazy. We are normal parents. We didn't leave so we could celebrate holidays, and that was the only reason why we wanted to get out of it. Yes, that is a perk. It has been so much fun to give our children that. And to make memories with them. But that was not the sole reason for leaving. The reason why we left is, I'm speaking for myself only, but I know Lance, my husband, feels the same way. Our consciences could not allow us to stay in a religion that has been nothing but a lie. And it was so fast and insane to me, how quickly my beliefs in this religion crumbled with the tiniest amount of research. I'm telling you, this wasn't months on end of research. It was like a day, and I was like, wow, this religion has been a lie and is so fake and wrong and horrible. I cannot in good conscience stay. I cannot in good conscience raise our small children in this. We had to get them out. If you are somebody who is not aware of Jehovah's Witnesses, I invite you to please listen. I think most people view them as just those super spiritual, maybe a little quirky at times, people that knock on your door. And there's so much more to this religion. And I'm thankful that it seems to be becoming more and more common that people are seeing them for what they are. Now let's kind of talk about my history with this. So I was raised a fourth generation Jehovah's Witness. My great grandmother was supposedly one of the anointed. My grandfather was so loyal up until the day he died. I'm talking like pioneer elder for as long as he possibly could be. On my mom's side, there are 7 siblings total. So I had 7 or 6 aunts and uncles, and then they had kids. There was lots of cousins, and it was a very big family. And then on my dad's side, he was the only one who was a Jehovah's Witness. He came in his 20s. So my grandfather actually brought him into the religion. My mom was a very intense witness, a rule follower. She, even as like a teenager and a young adult before she got married, did nothing wrong. So she had high hopes for me and my sister. I do have an older sister. And unfortunately, we let her down a lot because we were normal teenagers with hormones. My dad was a lot more understanding because he grew up not a Jehovah's Witness. He was a little bit more lenient and easier to go to about stuff, especially when you messed up or did something wrong. He was the one that we would go to because he was easier to talk to. So when I was young, it has since changed. We had Tuesday and Thursday nights that you had meetings from like 7:30 until like 9 o'clock. And then Sundays you had a meeting as well, which was a couple hours or close to a couple hours. And then you also had your field service, your ministry that you would go in, and it was not required. They say it is definitely voluntary basis, but that's not true. If you don't go out in service, you are considered inactive, spiritually weak. So it is very much a requirement. As a kid, because I was in school, I would do Saturdays. So that meant I was in school Monday through Friday. Saturday mornings waking up early to go out in service. Sundays waking up early for meetings. 2 nights a week I was up late. It's a very hard life to live, especially as a kid. You have no time to do anything fun. You have no freedoms, and you don't have any choices. You are required. I remember my mom had this rule: unless you're throwing up or had a fever, you were at meetings, you were in service. And that was even if you just didn't feel like going, or you had a hard day at school, or you had a lot of homework. There was no excuse. You were there. So it's not an easy life to live as a child, especially. Another thing about it is most churches will have, separate areas that they take the kids, and they do stuff that is more catered and geared towards children. And as Jehovah's Witnesses, that is not the case. You sit in that same auditorium as everyone else, and you're hearing the exact same stuff as them, which to me, looking back now, is so crazy. I mean, they talk about everything from masturbation to pornography, relations, and they mention oral death and these horrible images of Armageddon and all this stuff. Tiny little ears as young as like a baby are hearing. And like, I think back about that, and it didn't really hit me until I had my own children. I was like, wow, this is inappropriate. And it's also no wonder that I was the most anxious child. I still suffer from extreme anxiety, and I have no doubt it comes from my upbringing. That's kind of a background of just the way Jehovah's Witnesses function as an organization, to kind of let people know what it's like growing up in that. See, I was baptized at the age of 13. Looking back, I so regret being that age, getting baptized. I had no idea what I was doing. I did it to make my parents happy. I also did it because there was a couple of friends we knew who were getting baptized, and I wanted to get baptized with them. I decided I wanted to get baptized at a district convention because more eyes on you, more praise. People will be so proud of me. And there's not a whole lot you can do as a Jehovah's Witness to get praise, and that's one of the biggest things you can do. The following school year, I begged my parents to not make me go back to school and to let me homeschool. So I was going into my 8th grade year, and they let me homeschool. And my reason for doing that was because I was so terrified of getting in trouble. Once you are baptized, you are held to a very high standard. And if you do anything against Bible standards, you run the risk of having to speak at a judicial committee, which is 3 elders, so men in the congregation, where they will ask all the questions they need to figure out if you are truly, sincerely repentant or not. If they view you as not repentant, you get disfellowshipped. And that means you are not physically removed from the congregation, but spiritually removed from the congregation. And that means people shun you. They cannot speak to you. They cannot be around you. You become invisible. So as a teenager, that was a terrifying thought, thinking of losing everything because you let your hormones get in the way. That was kind of the beginning of me, I think, kind of questioning. Mind you, I didn't have real doubts. I didn't love the constant fear in that organization of not being good enough, of messing up and losing everything. My sister, who is older than me, was disfellowshipped as an 18-year-old, and she ran away and eloped, thinking that would fix things, and it didn't. She still got disfellowshipped. So at the age of 15 years old, I was forced to shun my only sibling, and that was horrible. I didn't really shun her. I would reach out to her through like MSN Messenger. If you're an early 2000s kid, you know that. Because I missed her and I was worried about her because not only did she lose everyone, she also moved out and was freshly married with someone and experiencing a whole new life with no support. So I still kept in contact with her as much as I could, but it's just horrible. That arrangement is disgusting. If anyone's ever experienced that, you know, it's a horrible thing to have to shun people you love. At 17, I met my husband. Me and him ended up getting in trouble, and I had to meet with a group of elders, which, let's just set the stage with that for a minute. Imagine you as a 17-year-old sitting in a room with 3 grown men who are asking you so many questions, detailed questions about what you have done, how you did it. Like, it is just so wrong. I did not get disfellowshipped. I got privately reproved. Again, for those that don't know, disfellowshipping is when you're like fully excommunicated. You're allowed to come to meetings and sit there in the audience, but no one can speak to you or look at you or talk to you. You can't see anybody outside of the meetings. We have also then private reproof or public reproof. And that is when you prove to them that you are sorry for what you did. And then you don't have to get fully thrown out, but you still get restrictions. So as a female, all that is you can't comment at the meetings, like you can't participate in them. You're viewed as like not exemplary and like not super spiritually strong. So people might kind of avoid you a little bit, but you can still be talked to. When it's private, they don't make an announcement at a meeting. When it's public, they will literally from this stage during a meeting, go up there and say, so-and-so has been reproved. So people know that like, ooh, they might not be super spiritual right now and might be a danger to my spirituality. So maybe I should be cautious around them. It's all about shaming people pretty much. 2 years later, I was 19 and I married my husband. It was my first time away from my house, away from my parents. And it was so freeing to finally get to be an adult and make decisions for myself. And that was also when I think reality kind of hit both my husband and I that like, maybe we didn't like being in this religion. So our entire adult lives, we were pretty inactive. We did try a couple times to really just dive nose first into the organization. And like, for me, it was, I tried to pioneer. And pioneering is when you are 70 hours a month, you're reporting out in the ministry. I tried that because I thought maybe I just wasn't doing enough. That's why I hated it. So if I pushed myself to go out more, I would start loving it and have that zeal, and it would be life-changing. Well, I hated it the whole time. I did it for an entire year. Like, I just can't do this. I don't enjoy this. I gave up after a year. Then, shortly after I pioneered, I got pregnant with our first baby. Becoming a parent is what really shook us to our core. Once you have children, they like to remind you that your child is a gift from God, and it is your responsibility to raise them to love God and be a spiritually strong person. So after our daughter was born, both my husband and I were like, we have to do this. It's our responsibility to do this the right way and to give her a chance at life. Because again, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are the only ones who will survive when Armageddon hits. They're the one true religion. They're the only ones who have the answers. They're the only ones who have the key to survive when Armageddon happens to hit and ruins the entire earth and kills off billions of people. And only the one tiny little percentage of Jehovah's Witnesses on the earth will be left standing. So as a parent, that was kind of a terrifying thought, to think that if I did something wrong, my child could die. So after she was born, we really dove headfirst into the organization and tried so hard to do everything right. My husband specifically, to prove to himself, said he wanted to start researching things he had questioned for years so that he could become a spiritually strong man and leader of our home. One of the big things he questioned was the Blood Doctrine. So again, if you're not familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses believe that blood transfusions, any form of blood products, plasma, whole blood cells, whole red, white blood cells, are completely wrong to take, even if it means saving your life. Which, when you think about that, it's so strange because they also teach you are supposed to respect life so much that you don't do stuff that takes any risks. You are not supposed to bungee jump or skydive. You're supposed to maintain your car because if it's got bad brakes and you plow into someone and you kill someone, you are blood guilty. Like, you are supposed to view life as so sacred, and yet in this one case, when medical science has a solution for you to save your life, you say, no, thank you. I can't do that because the Bible says I can't. So that is what started unraveling things for my husband especially. He started researching all on jw.org or the Watchtower Online, which is all just articles from the Jehovah's Witness organization. And he just couldn't find an answer that made sense to him. So then he started doing a little bit of research with like medical journals and just kind of trying to understand a little bit more about how your body functions and works when you actually get a blood transfusion. Two things that stuck out to him. One, breast milk, which again, I was freshly postpartum with a baby. I breastfed both my children. Breast milk has whole white blood cells, like a ton of whole white blood cells. That's what helps build up babies' immunities, keeps them healthy. And he was like, so as a Jehovah's Witness, if you are in need of actual like whole white blood cells, you can't have that. But you can breastfeed a child with no issue, and your child is ingesting whole white blood cells. Like, he was confused by that. Another thing that stuck out to him was like how your body actually recycles blood. It's constantly recirculating, rebuilding, making more blood cells, making more blood. Like, so if you're getting a blood transfusion, your body is slowly going to recycle out that blood that's not yours because it's making its own blood again. So he was just, it didn't set right with him. The reason why he started researching the blood thing was because when I checked in for labor with my first baby, of course, they get you all checked in. They had my medical durable power of attorney on file that said I will not take any form of blood, even in the case of an emergency, which, if anybody knows, childbirth, you can lose a lot of blood. My labor and delivery went fine, but when I was pushing, most likely a blood vessel broke and there was a lot of blood. And my husband said he had this moment where the doctor kind of looked at him. He said she wasn't scared looking, but she had an uncertain look on his face. And since he had never been through a delivery of a child, the amount of blood he saw scared him to death. And he said in that moment, he thought to himself, I will give my wife and my baby a blood transfusion. Thankfully, everything was fine, but that's what started his questioning of things and why he started researching stuff. Fast forward about 2.5 years, we were in the hospital again for my second baby, or we were prepping to go to the hospital. It was probably a week before his due date. And my husband kind of sat me down and he's like, I just want you to know that if something went wrong, I will not abide by the no blood thing. Like, I will tell them to give you a blood transfusion. Or if something is wrong with our son, the same. And he's like, I cannot back the blood doctrine. He's like, the worst that happens to me is I get disfellowshipped for a year and I still have you alive and our child alive. I totally agreed with him. Our lives were more important than the possibility of being disfellowshipped and kicked out of a religion for a year. Like, it doesn't matter. We could have said we were repentant. We could have said we were under distress and come back to the congregation after a year and everything would be normal and I would still be alive and her child would still be alive. So that was the beginning of a crack for me, especially. Anyways, November of 2022, we would go usually Sundays to the meetings. And I can remember one day kind of being like, okay, we got to go today. We had been getting a lot of text from people like, we miss you. Where have you been? Are you sick? Is everything okay? Future Alyssa here editing. I forgot to mention, we were always on Zoom because it was just easier with our two little ones. People still didn't think that was good enough. So I can vividly remember getting ready for one and he kind of wasn't getting ready. And I was like, are you going today? And he was like, no. So I took both kids by myself. And then a couple weeks later, it happened again. And I think it happened like 2 or 3 times. And finally, after the 3rd time, I remember coming home, sat him down, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, do you not want to go to meetings anymore? And he said he no longer wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness. And he would support whatever I did, but he did not want our children to be baptized in the religion until they were grown adults who could make a decision on their own. And he would never allow our children to sit in front of a group of elders to confess any sort of sin. He didn't like that. He said it would never happen. And as a Jehovah's Witness, it is drilled in your head. If people start doubting the religion, that's a huge red flag. That means that Satan, the devil, has gotten a hold of them and is whispering in their ear all these lies. Having my own husband kind of sit there and do that, I had this moment of like, oh my God, like Satan is in our house. This sounds ridiculous, but like, this is where I was. This is how you're raised. This is how the religion makes things out. Satan is in our home. He has control of my husband. What is going on? So of course I asked him, do you have a guilty conscience? So I think about it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, my poor husband. But I was like, is there something that you're hiding that you need to tell me, or you need to tell the elders? Like, we can go to the elders and blah, blah, blah. Do we need to have a meeting with them? And he was like, no. He was like, I did research and I don't believe this is the truth. I don't think everything we have been told our entire lives is true. And I kind of calmed down a little bit. And so I was like, well, what are you talking about? I asked him, like, I said, I don't want to hear any like apostate lies, but just tell me something that has gotten to you. And he was like, well, you already know my issue with the blood thing. The blood doctrine is a core teaching within our religion. This is such a fundamental teaching of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then he was like, and that just has fallen apart. It doesn't make sense. There's no true biblical backing with that. And then his second thing he brought up to me was their dealings with governments. And I was like, what are you talking about? So here's a little thing. The organization tells you, do not look at anything negative. If you see a negative report in the news about Jehovah's Witnesses, it is all a lie. It's apostate lies. Apostates are out there spreading this stuff. They tell you any research you need to do about our religion can be done within our website that we have set up. And that's all you need. You don't need to Google us. Don't do that. The reason why they do that is because when you actually do Google Jehovah's Witnesses, there's so much negativity out there and it's real. It's true stuff. This is not apostate lies. And the biggest thing is you see their dealings with governments. So he specifically mentioned the Australian Royal Commission. There was a huge investigation on the Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia to see how they handled, and it wasn't just witnesses. They did this like with all religions in Australia. They were trying to hold religions and religious organizations accountable for how they handled child sexual abuse. And Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, being a religion there, was one that was investigated. And it came out that there were thousands of cases that went undocumented and unreported. They would just handle it internally. And that is so scary and so horrible. I'll get into that more. And then he also brought up, I'm sure a lot of people kind of remember this. During COVID, there would be these like produce boxes you would get. You would get like these food boxes given to you. And in our area, it was worded to us that the organization had worked out some deal with some local food companies to help give food to the witnesses who were all struggling during COVID financially. And, you know, it was such a blessing from Jehovah that this was happening. We never felt right with that. So we were like, my husband was in real estate at the time of COVID, and his business was booming during COVID, surprisingly. And so we were like, we don't want to take food that we truly don't need. Like, we were fine financially. There are plenty of other people out there who need it more than us. And so one of the first boxes we got, my husband was like, can I just like put this on next door and ask if any neighbors need this stuff? And that was shut down. Like, no, you absolutely do not do that. Come to find out, those boxes were something set up through like the actual like government in the United States. Like, it had nothing to do with Bethel. Bethel did not set this up, and the governing body did not set this up. This was a governmental setup across the United States just to help citizens. And they were giving them to churches because they felt churches and like religious organizations would be the best place because they are people who have food banks and who are helping those needy. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses were taking those and just giving them to everybody who is only a Jehovah's Witness, and basically saying like, you don't share this because if they find out like we're handing these out to other people, they'll stop giving it to us. But they also claimed the governing body set this up. So that was a huge thing for him. Like, he was like, why lie about that? Like, why lie about that? Of all things, so strange. So he brought up those couple of things, and we ended the conversation. And I told him I loved him. I would support him. But I didn't want to leave the religion because our family was in it. I didn't want to lose them. And I felt at the time still that there were some good fundamental teachings for our children to be raised in a way that was good for them, to make them good humans. Well, fast forward maybe a week, and I was up in the middle of the night with my son, and I always have my phone on me, and I like sometimes will listen to an audiobook or whatever, but I decided to just look up the Australian Royal Commission. And there's a ton of videos out there of the actual like court stuff that was happening, like videos of them interviewing people within the organization, this and that. Well, I read through that night while holding my son for like an hour, just some of the court documents. And then the next day, I started looking at some of the videos. And I came across, if you've seen it, you know, Geoffrey Jackson, one of the governing body members. The governing body are the men who claim that they're the people running this organization. They claim that they are anointed, they are in direct contact. Like, Jehovah almost like puts it in their hearts to do stuff. Like, they are a mouthpiece for Jehovah with his earthly organization. Okay, so keep that in mind. In this video, they're questioning Geoffrey Jackson with, you know, do you have elders' manuals that tell them how to handle child sexual abuse? And I believe he said no, which is a lie, because if you find an elder's booklet, it 100% does have like how you're supposed to handle that. But the thing that got me, and I'm telling you, I saw it, and in a second, my entire body went, I'm done. Like, I will never step foot again in the Kingdom Hall. I will never take my children there. They asked him, basically, I don't know the exact wording, but the lawyer asked him, so you believe that you are a spokesperson for God here on earth? As a Jehovah's Witness, if you're watching this, you would say yes, correct? you would say, yes, they're spokespeople for God. That is where we get everything. That's where we get our spiritual food, because Jehovah God in his Holy Spirit moves them to give us what we need. They are spokespeople for God. They are the earthly representation of God in his organization. Okay? He sat there for a second and he goes, well, that would be presumptuous of me to say we're the only ones who are spokespeople for God on earth. I heard that and I literally was like, you've got to be kidding me. As a child, if you were raised in the organization, you know we had to stand up for the religion as young as first grade and kindergarten. If there was a birthday party, you had to explain why you didn't celebrate those. If there was anything holiday related, you had to sit there and explain to your fellow classmates why you don't celebrate. You had to every single day stand up for the organization and your beliefs. And yet here is the supposed leader, a spokesperson for God, saying, well, we may not be the only people on earth who speak for God. I viewed that as him being a coward and afraid of man, honestly. And that night, I can remember, I was prepping dinner and I looked at my husband. I said, I watched some of the Royal Commission stuff. I said, I never want to go back again. That was December of 2022. From that point forward, it was a downhill nosedive pretty much of deconstruction and figuring out how we were going to exit and get away from this and protect our children from it. There's so much out there. So then you have the Norway situation, which I remember being on the broadcasts, which is like a monthly like special TV show thing that what Jehovah's Witnesses put out. And they were bringing up how we were being spiritually persecuted in Norway for our beliefs in the Disfellowshipping arrangement. And one of the governing body members, Tony Morris, sat there and goes, they want us to get rid of our Disfellowshipping arrangement. And we are not going to do that because it's in the Bible, basically. I don't know what his wording was. He was so sassy about it. And then lo and behold, a couple months later, he is no longer one of the governing body members and has fallen off the face of the earth. So who knows where he is. And they were back in court with Norway and changing all their stuff. So it's no longer called Disfellowshipping. It's called removed. And Norway's biggest issue was underage people being disfellowshipped. Like they're fighting with Jehovah's Witnesses saying it's wrong. One, for them to be getting baptized and committing to a lifelong commitment. But two, to be going through judicial committees and being disfellowshipped and losing everything, like mentally for underage people, it's not right. It's a basic human right for this type of stuff to not happen. So Jehovah's Witnesses are changing their policies. Underage people now maybe won't even have to have judicial committees. It's going to take a lot for them to get disfellowshipped. Supposedly this is a new light. Jehovah is making things better and brighter for them. But this is all coming from Norway. They keep going back to court because they had their registration removed, their religious registration, which means that they are losing out on like tax money and tax savings. It all comes from a money place. This has nothing to do with them actually being a good organization. This is all happening while I'm deconstructing. I'm watching it in real time, them fighting in courts and claiming these things like that. There is no mandate to shun people who leave or are disfellowshipped. That is a personal choice. That is up to each individual congregant member. That is the biggest load of crap I have ever heard. Because if you're raising it, it's a load of crap. Like the second someone gets disfellowshipped, you have to shun them. That is not a personal choice. If you don't shun them, you yourself can get in trouble, or you yourself can end up disfellowshipped if you're going against the arrangement of disfellowshipping and shunning. So I'm watching it, just these lies upon lies and court cases. And it was quite honestly the easiest thing for me to deconstruct that entire religion. I read Crisis of Conscience, which if you are questioning things or you are a Jehovah's Witness, please read that book. It is by Ray Franz, I think. He was a governing body member who got disfellowshipped for apostasy because he was seeing the inner workings of the organization and realized how fake and false this entire thing was. And he does not hold back. After reading that, I was like, yeah, I did have a crisis of conscience. There was no way, after seeing the truth behind the truth, I was going to stay in it. So from December until the day we were disassociated, we did not go to any meetings. We did go to the memorial that year. We did it purely because we didn't want a million questions. I have a photo of me there. I look at that all the time and think about how miserable I look. I look dead inside, which I felt dead inside. It felt wrong to be there. It felt uncomfortable to be there. We got in the car and I remember being super emotional because I was like, I will never see those people again. Like, I'm never going back to a hall. I will never go to an assembly. I will never go to a memorial. These people I have known for decades, I'm never going to see again. I started mourning the losses I knew that were coming at that point. So from that point, we decided, as a Jehovah's Witnesses, this is why Jehovah's Witnesses is such a cult. I was baptized at 13. I was baptized at 13. My husband was baptized at 15. When you're baptized, they tell you this is your lifelong commitment to Jehovah God. And you can't change your mind. So we had two choices. Well, we had three choices. Our first choice, which is something we strongly considered, was moving far away, where we wouldn't have family breathing down our necks and knowing what our meeting attendance was like. And we started strongly and seriously looking at selling our home and moving. We were looking at North Carolina because it's literally across the country from where we are. And that would have been the easiest thing because our families would have been in the dark as to what our doings were within a congregation. So we could have done what they call fading, which is like, we just move there. We never turn in cards anywhere. If you're new, if you don't know Jehovah's Witnesses, there's publisher cards that travel with you everywhere. They tell you like about judicial committees you've been through and what kind of a Jehovah's Witness you are and blah, 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 blah. So they have like a file on you. So that was our first thought. And we started researching and looking, and we were so strongly considering it because that just seemed like the easier thing, and we would have been able to still keep family a little bit. The other option would have been fading locally, and that would have been, we weren't going to meetings anyway, but just kind of like continuing to do that and just never going again and hoping eventually people would just stop reaching out. While we were like in this fading process between memorial and when we disassociated, we were still around my in-laws some because they live really close to us, and we would still see them every once in a while for family dinners. By that point, our relationship with my brother and sister-in-law was very strained, and that came way before we even left. We just had personalities that did not get along, and they were not people we liked being around or wanted to be friends with. So we very seldom saw them, but we were still around my husband's parents a little bit. And we felt like children every time we were around them, or like studies, like people they're trying to pull into the truth, because we just felt always like this over the top, like, oh, the meeting was so wonderful the other day, or the broadcast this month was so beautiful, all this stuff. And it was like, when we were so checked out of the religion, we wanted nothing to do with it. It just felt so like kind of icky, really. That's the only way I can explain it. We started distancing ourselves from that because we weren't comfortable with it. And it was like, again, you don't have autonomy to make choices for yourself. We could have gone to them and said, we still believe in God. We still have a relationship with him. We just don't want to go to kingdom halls or meetings because we don't believe that's the only way to have a relationship, which again, I think that's true. My relationship with God or a creator or whatever I believe in is between me and them. There should not have to be a middleman. And that is where Jehovah's Witnesses are failing, is like putting the governing body as like God. You have to be doing everything they say to have a relationship with God. And it's like, it's so wrong and backwards. So we distanced ourselves from his parents quite a bit towards the end. In the middle of all this, I break my ankle and have surgery. And my parents, my mom and dad, were coming to visit us like once a week to help me around the house and just help kind of keep the kids busy because I'm wheeling around and like crawling up and down my stairs with 2 little kids. And it was so nice to have that time with them. The first part of my marriage, I didn't see my parents often. I was like just so happy to be away from home and to be my own person. I didn't see them much. It was nice to at least have those last few months with my parents. I knew I was going to lose them. I kind of felt like I clung on to them a lot towards the end because I knew it was coming. The time hit that like kind of a boiling point happened with my mom and dad. They had come down for their weekly visit. And what would have been like the district or regional convention, the 3-day like big assembly thing that was happening, that we were assigned to, was coming up in like a week. I remember my mom sitting down with me. We were having lunch and she goes, "Are you guys going to be able to make it to your convention since your ankle is starting to feel a little bit better?" But obviously after the memorial, we had decided like we were never stepping foot into anything Jehovah's Witness again. And I just went, "No, I don't think we're going to make it." Kind of hoping that she would drop it. I am not a confrontational person by any means. I am the people pleaser of my family, and I avoid confrontation in any way, shape, or form. So that was my way of trying to avoid confrontation. But she kept pushing. So then she goes, "Okay, so you're going to come to ours next month then," or it was like 6 weeks out. And I go, "No, probably not." And I can so vividly remember that day is like burned into my brain. She got this look on her face that was almost like she was seeing the devil himself in front of her. Like, that sounds insane, but that's like the only way I can explain it. And she looks at me and she goes, "Do you not believe this is the truth anymore?" Like, from me saying we're not going to a convention to that just shows you there are these like trigger things in Jehovah's Witnesses' brain that like how I had the reaction with my husband where I thought like Satan was literally in our house, shows like really to me how brainwashed people in this organization are. And I had a moment of being like in my head thinking like, do I lie and just get this conversation to stop? Or do I finally confront this and do I be honest? And I go, "No, I don't believe this is the truth, Mom." Both her and my dad started crying. And she was like, why would you say that? And this is where things get kind of hazy for me because I think I started like panicking. But I think I said something along the lines of like, I don't want to share the stuff I have found because I don't feel that's right on my part out of respect for you. But I don't believe it's the truth. And I don't want to raise my children in this. There was a little bit of a window of them kind of getting themselves out of my house after that because it was like conversation's done. I'm sure in their head they were thinking like Satan has her now. I remember my dad, he's an elder by the way, I've been an elder most of my life. He pulled up a couple of scriptures and shared them with me. I don't even remember what they were. When they left, I will never forget the hug my dad gave me. My mom barely hugged me. And I felt like my dad kind of clung to me a little bit longer. That night, after my husband got home from work, I looked at him and I said, "We have to disassociate and we have to do it now." Because I knew without a doubt in my heart that 1, my relationship with my parents was gone. And 2, if we stayed and just continued to try to fade, they would do everything in their power to 1, try and get us to change our minds, and 2, try to save our children. We wrote our letter to disassociate that night, and I wrote a really long letter to my parents and my sister, trying to explain myself as best as I could without telling them what I found. Because again, if you want to believe in this religion, that's on you. I respect that. I wanted that same respect back, which I knew wasn't going to happen, but I could hope. I sent the letter that night to them, and we mailed off our letters to disassociate. And my husband emailed a copy to an elder in our hall, but he was the man who married us and who we had great respect for. And Lance wanted to tell him personally. My sister texted me like a couple hours before I sent the letter. And she was like, "Dad and Mom called me. What's going on?" And she was like on the road. And she's like, "I will call you as soon as I'm home." And then I sent the The letter to her said, please look this over and call me. Like, I wanted to have a conversation with her. And I could see her read my text. And the next thing I know, I see the alert that she's removed me from Find My Friends. And then I look on Instagram and Facebook, and I've been removed and blocked. And she never reached out to me. So that just shows you the way this organization works. The second someone questions or doubts the religion, people literally shut down and they push you as far away as they can because they don't want to hear your apostate lies. Not even family gives you the decency of a true conversation. I spent, I think, a good 30 minutes on the phone with my mom and dad, begging them to still be in my life. My mom said some very hurtful things that I will never forget. And as a mom myself, will never understand turning on your child that way. So that's how we left. My husband had a few calls with a couple of his friends that found out, and all of them were like saying, oh, we've all had doubts at some point. Like, you just kind of push those down and you move forward. And it was like, we both had the agreement that we felt wrong, being like, yeah, well, you should look at X, Y, and Z. We didn't feel like that was our place to push the truths of the truth we had found out. So he would just kind of cordially say, like, yeah, this is more than doubts, but I appreciate, your friendship, and we're always here. We're not going anywhere. Everybody and their mothers around us shut us out and shun us and pretend we're dead. And that's what they view us as, is dead, because, again, their thought processes when an Armageddon hits, which they've said it's going to hit like every year for the last 100 years, we will die with everybody on this earth. And that's where I try and be understanding with them a little bit. But being shunned by every person you've ever known and loved is a horrible feeling. Especially when you have the leaders of this organization in courts lying through their teeth saying it's a personal choice. People don't have to shun. Family relations can stay the same. That's up to every individual person. When I have witnessed firsthand that is such a lie. My own mother told me, you know what this means if you turn in that letter to disassociate. You know I can't speak to you, and you know I can't be around you ever again. How is that a choice to make? It's a rule. And if they don't abide by it, they get in trouble themselves. I know I'll never have a relationship with my family again. I will probably get a call one day that my mom and dad are dying. And that's just what's going to happen. Now let's talk about the aftermath of all this. This is another thing I feel the need to get out there, because I know that there's probably been a lot of untruths being told from our parents specifically about the way we've handled stuff with our children and their relationships. So we're going to go into that part. I did not plan to cry this much. I'm really sorry, guys, but this is, again, very emotional and so unnatural to go through this. So, okay, so we disassociated in July, and I think it was like a couple weeks or 3 weeks after we were officially announced as no longer Jehovah's Witnesses. My husband and I decided we wanted to reach out to her parents to let them know, like, we by no means want to keep our children from them. We still want them to have a relationship with them. And we came up with guidelines on how that would look. Because, again, Jehovah's Witnesses are all about saving people. So if we left, our authority as our children's parents was out the window. And our parents were going to do everything in their power to save our children, which I can respect, knowing that they think we're all going to die. But at the same time, we're still their parents. It's up to us to decide how we want our children raised. So we sent kind of like a bullet point thing. We said, we still want you around our children, but here's how it's going to go. One of us, as in my husband or myself, will be present at all times. And that was purely just so indoctrination was not going to happen with our children. We said that we would respect their beliefs and would not bring up a single thing that we had found or talk anything religious related. So we weren't going to talk down about Jehovah's Witnesses around them. Like, that's not our place. If you're happy where you are, we are so happy for you. We want the same respect back. Another rule was that they could shun us every other day of the week, but they were not allowed to like outrightly shun whichever parent was with them at the time. So, they were supposed to act as normal as possible, which in the past, both sides of our parents were very like give big hugs and like kisses on the cheeks and, would talk to us a lot. And we had, I thought, great relationships. So we wanted that kind of normalcy still there in front of our children because we didn't want to see our kids seeing any difference. We were trying to protect them from the big changes. We just didn't also want our kids to see shunning as like a normal way of interacting with people because it's abusive. And in my head, it was like, if we let our kids see us being abused that way, one day they could end up in a relationship where they get the silent treatment from their partner, or they're treated like crap for days on end from their partner, and they just think that's normal. And that is not going to happen on my watch. So we said you have to be as normal as humanly possible in the window that you're around us. We also said we'd meet at neutral ground. So we're not going to invite them to our house because they probably would feel uncomfortable with that. We didn't want to go to their house because we weren't comfortable with that. And then the last thing we said was, please be aware that we are planning on celebrating holidays and birthdays. And whatever your personal feelings are on that, be an adult and keep them to yourselves. And we said this because our daughter's birthday was coming up in like a couple months, and she was so excited to celebrate her birthday. And like, I couldn't imagine her bringing that up and them being so off or weird and making her feel bad about it. So it was like, you're the adult, figure out your emotions on your own time. We're forewarning you, this is what's happening. So both sides agreed to that. I can remember the first meeting, and it was so uncomfortable. I met my parents first, and there was no hugs. There was like a very cold hello, and my mom wouldn't like look me in the face, and I left feeling so uncomfortable. And then the same kind of thing happened with my in-laws, and I left that one feeling like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? Like, we said to try and be as normal as possible, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt. It was my first time seeing all of them since everything had happened. And I thought maybe there's just going to be an adjustment period. They're upset. They're not happy. I get it. So like a month later, I agreed to another meetup with both sides, and it was the same thing. I mean, at one point I was like pushing my son in a stroller next to my mom for like a good distance. She didn't look at me or say a single word to me. And I was like, okay. And at that time we were at a zoo, and I had packed a lunch for my kids, and I took extras for my parents. I sat down with my kids because they were getting grumpy and hungry. And I was like getting the food out, and I like put everything on the table, and I was like, I packed extra. If you guys are hungry, please help yourself. And my mom grabbed something and like walked away and like refused to sit at the same table as us. And I was just like, how ungrateful. And like, this is so stupid. We're like, you can't even sit down for 2 seconds to eat your lunch with your grandchildren. And then it was uncomfortable again with my in-laws, and then barely looking at me or speaking to me. And I went home after those meetups, and I was just like, my mental health at that point was at like an all-time low, as I'm sure you can imagine. I was in therapy, and I was trying to find a medication that was going to like make me feel less like a broken zombie of a human. And my husband was like, we were doing this for them. If they can't respect the rules we laid out that they agreed to, then we're taking a break and we're pausing this. He reached out to the dads, my dad and his dad, and was like, we're going to put a pause on these meetups for right now because it's just affecting Alyssa's mental health a little bit too much. And there was like no response back. And that was like a year and a half ago. And there's been no reach out to like try and reconcile or make things better. Or I just know if I were in their shoes, I would have reached out and been like, I'm so sorry. It's just, we were uncomfortable. We're trying to work through our emotions with this. Like, How can we fix this? We still want to be in our grandchildren's lives. And there's been none of that, which to me just shows that they don't truly care about my children. And as a mom, the rage I feel for that makes me like, you don't deserve my children and your lives. If you don't have the decency to, one, treat me and my husband like humans for a 2-hour window once a month, and you don't have the decency to try and fix that for your grandchildren's sake, you do not deserve to have them in your life. So that's been kind of a battle to deal with, because my children deserve so much better. On the plus side, we are creating our own not blood family outside of it. And it's been beautiful to see people who want to be in our lives. We have an adopted aunt for my children. I have a fleshly aunt, my mom's sister, who left the religion in her 20s with her small children. And she has begun so much to us. My husband's biological father, who he never thought he'd have a relationship with, came into our lives last year. I'm so thankful we have him in our lives, not only for my husband, but he and his girlfriend, we call them Pow Pow and Grammy, have stepped into our children's lives in such a huge way. I'll never be able to thank them. We're building our lives from ground level. It feels good to find people around us and surround ourselves with people who want to be in our lives just for us. I want to end this with just talking to those who have left, those who are in the process of leaving, those with doubts. First and foremost, please know, I know we were raised and told our entire lives that the world and the people in the world are all evil and horrible, and it's scary and terrible. There are some amazing, wonderful humans out there, and I have had better connections, better friendships, and just kinder humans in general on the other side of the organization. Everything in that organization is so surface level and conditional. When you step away from that and you realize what unconditional love and friendships feel like, you realize how cheated you've been your whole life in that organization. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there, to find a new community, to find new friends, to find new support. You will find people who want to help you and who love you for who you are. The other thing I want to talk about is embrace everything on the other side. I started this saying we didn't leave so we could celebrate holidays and birthdays. We left, as you can see, because of the lies of the organization. But that has been such an amazing thing to experience and to watch our children get to experience. Birthdays have been beautiful. Embrace it all. I'm telling you, the real world is beautiful. Does it come with heartache? Yes. I have no doubt in 10, 20, 30 years, I will never, ever regret making the choice we made. My children are living a life I never would have imagined myself or my little ones getting to have. And it's been so beautiful. So please don't let anything hold you back. Jump in, live the life you want to live, be true, authentic to yourself. And I promise you, you will live a beautiful life. This is a long one. And again, this is not what my channel is going to be about, but I feel the need to share this because it weighs so heavily on me still sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story. If people are watching this who are not Jehovah's Witnesses, never been, some of these terms may be foreign to you. I tried to explain the ones I can remember when they were coming up. It's hard to fully understand this organization unless you were born and raised in it. To all of my friends who may be watching this, thank you for helping me heal. To our family, we love you. Whether you are related to us by blood or your adopted family, we love you so much. And we appreciate everything you have done for us and our children. And to my mom and dad, if you ever see this, I love you. I will always love you. And I hope one day we can find our way back to each other. Okay. Now that I'm a little bit more together again. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the support. Again, this is not my normal content. This is a part of who I am as a human. This is what has made me who I am today. The good, the bad, the ugly. But if you want to continue to follow this journey, most of my content will just be our lives. Now that you know birthdays and holidays are new to us, you can watch the excitement with us. My son's birthday is this weekend, and I'm so excited for him. It's his first birthday party. Last year, we didn't do a birthday party. We just had like a little family day, and this year he wanted friends. So he's getting his first birthday party on Saturday. And yeah, follow along, guys. Like and subscribe. Thank you again for all the support and the love, and for all of those who may be watching who know us, whether you're still in or if you are new to us and you have helped us heal. Thank you. If you're still in and you're curious about our story, I hope you watch the whole thing. I hope you see the truth behind it. I hope you see we're still the same people. We're good humans. I wish you all the best. I wish you a lifetime of happiness. And I appreciate any support, even if it's from a distance. So again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being here and sitting here with me in this emotional, vulnerable place. I can't thank you all enough. Have a great one. And again, regular content next week. We'll have probably footage of my son's birthday and us decorating for it. So thanks for following along, and I will talk to you guys next time.